My father was a man of routines. Even after the dementia started carving out pieces of his mind, the routines remained. He'd sit in his wingback chair, stare at the bird feeder, and wait for my mother to come home. The problem was, my mother had been gone for 3 years. I moved back into the old house to care for him, but I had a high-stress job that kept me tethered to my laptop. I couldn't be in his room 24 hours a day. So, I bought the Aegis home guardian system. It was top of the line, 4K night vision and an AI-driven motion sensor that sent a skeletal map to my phone. It turned people into glowing green stick figures on my screen. I could monitor him without feeling like I was invading the last of his dignity. For the first month, it was peace of mind. I'd be in the kitchen and see the little green figure of my father move from the bed to the bathroom. Pulse. Click. Safe. Then, the glitches started. It happened on a Tuesday, around midnight. I was in bed when my phone buzzed. Movement detected. Master bedroom. I opened the app. I saw the green stick figure of my father lying in bed. But there was a second figure. A smaller, blue stick figure standing in the far corner of the room. It wasn't moving. It was just there. I ran to his room. I burst through the door, heart hammering. My father was fast asleep, his chest rising and falling in the moonlight. The corner was empty. I checked behind the curtains, under the bed, the closet. Nothing. I checked the app again. The blue figure was gone. Technical interference, the support forum said. Reflections off a mirror or a dust mote can trick the AI into seeing a human shape. I wanted to believe that, but the next night, the blue figure wasn't in the corner. It was sitting on the edge of my father's bed. I watched the screen, breathless. The green figure, my father, didn't move, but the blue figure reached out a thin, digital arm and placed it on his chest. My father's breathing, which was usually ragged and shallow, suddenly became deep and rhythmic. He looked peaceful. "It's Mom," I whispered to the empty hallway. Grief makes you a gambler. I started to believe the sensor was picking up a frequency the human eye couldn't see. I believed my mother was coming back to soothe him during his restless nights. Over the next week, the blue figure became a constant. Every night at 2 a.m., it would appear at the door, walk to his side, and stay there until dawn. Sometimes the two figures would appear to hold hands. I stopped checking the locks on the house. Why would I? My mother was guarding him. On Friday, the app sent a new notification. New person recognized. The AI had analyzed the figure's gait and height. It asked me to label the person. With tears in my eyes, I typed in, "Mom." That night, I watched the feed with a sense of warmth. I saw Mom enter the room, but this time she didn't sit. She stood over my father, and the stick figure began to wave. No, she was beckoning. My father got out of bed. He followed the blue figure out of the bedroom. I watched them on the screen. Two glowing figures walking down the hallway toward the back door. I smiled, thinking he was having a beautiful, lucid dream. I watched the back door icon turn red. Unlocked. "Go ahead, Dad," I whispered. "Have a walk with her." I fell asleep watching the two figures wander into the woods on the GPS map. I woke up at 7 a.m. to a house that felt too quiet. The back door was wide open. A bitter winter wind was whistling through the kitchen. "Dad?" I called out. No answer. I grabbed my phone. I went to the event history to replay the footage. I wanted to see the beautiful moment they stepped into the moonlight together. I clicked the raw video tab. The actual camera footage I usually ignored in favor of the stick figure maps. I hit play. I watched the screen. My father was in bed. The room was dark. Then, the bedroom door creaked open. It wasn't my mother. It was a man. A gaunt, hollow-cheeked man in a tattered coat. He had been living in our crawl space. I found the food wrappers later. He didn't have a ghost's grace. He moved with a heavy, predatory limp. I watched the raw video as this stranger stood over my father for an hour, just watching him breathe. Then, he leaned down and whispered into my father's ear. My father, lost in his dementia, looked up and smiled. He thought the man was a friend. He thought he was safe. The The man held out a hand. My father took it. The tragedy wasn't that the man was there. The tragedy was the AI. The software was designed to find human patterns. It had seen this intruder every night for a week. Because I had labeled him Mom, the AI stopped treating him as a threat. It stopped sounding the alarm. It had learned to trust the monster because I told it to. I found my father 2 hours later in the creek at the edge of the woods. The water was too cold for a man his age. He was face down in the silt. His gold wedding ring was gone. His watch was gone. As I knelt in the mud, screaming into the gray morning sky, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a notification from the Aegis app. It had detected movement in the brush just 20 feet behind me. I looked at the screen. A single blue stick figure was standing behind a cedar tree. The app popped up a bubble asking for confirmation. Is this Mom? I looked at the tree. I saw a flash of a tattered coat. I saw the glint of my father's gold ring on a stranger's finger. I didn't answer the app. I just sat there, realizing that I had spent a week welcoming my father's killer into his room, all because I wanted to believe in a ghost more than I wanted to look at the truth. The stick figure on the screen turned and walked deeper into the forest. And the AI, ever faithful, sent me one final toast. Mom has left the area. Total monitored time, 6 hours, 22 minutes. After a few months, I settled at the house. The Aegis boundary update was supposed to be a gift. It didn't just monitor my property, it synced with the neighborhood mesh. If a known threat or an unrecognized entity was spotted 3 blocks away, my phone would chirp a soft, polite warning. Safety is a shared language, the box had promised. For the first month, it was boring. I'd get pings for domestic cat or delivery personnel. My neighbor, Mr. Henderson, a retired clockmaker who lived alone, was a constant green stick figure on my screen, usually identified as known resident, neighbor. He spent his evenings pruning his hedges with rhythmic mechanical precision. Then, the glitches started. One Tuesday at 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. Alert, unrecognized entity in proximity. I opened the app. The camera feed showed Mr. Henderson's backyard. There was the familiar green skeletal figure of the old man, sitting in his lawn chair. But standing directly behind him was a second figure. This one wasn't green. It was pitch black, a void in the shape of a man that the AI couldn't seem to skin with a color. There was no notification for the second figure. The AI was ignoring it. The next morning, I saw Mr. Henderson at the mailbox. He looked pale, his movements sluggish. "You okay, Howard?" I asked. "Just tired, son," he rasped. "Feel like I'm carrying a heavy coat I can't take off." That night, I watched the app again. The black figure was closer now. On the screen, it looked like it was leaning its head against Howard's shoulder. The AI toast popped up. Neighbor status, resting. I tried to call the Aegis support line. "My mesh is showing an artifact," I explained. "A black skeletal frame behind my neighbor." The technician sighed. "That's a negative space bug, sir. It happens when the AI predicts a shadow is a person, but can't find a heat signature. Just ignore it." But I couldn't. Over the next week, the black figure grew. On the screen, it began to overlap Howard, its limbs intertwining with his green ones. By Friday, you couldn't tell where Howard ended and the shadow began. On Saturday morning, the neighborhood mesh went silent. No pings, no known resident updates. I walked over to Howard's house and knocked. No answer. I peered through the window and saw his Aegis hub glowing on the kitchen counter. I pulled out my phone and checked the mesh one last time. The screen showed Howard's living room. There was no green figure anymore, just a single, massive black skeleton sitting in Howard's favorite armchair. My phone vibrated with a final, cheerful notification. Update complete. Neighbor identity merged. New resident recognized. The wait. I backed away from the door as the black figure on my screen slowly turned its head to look at the camera, at me. Like, share, and subscribe for more stories.